Sahana vavatu Sahana bhunaktu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma vidvishavahai. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Okay, welcome back. And once again, thank you very much for your schedule flexibility. Okay, so we can get started. We will quickly recap the 4 verses we talked last week, we covered last week. So the key topic here was Shankaracharya was trying to explain in clear terms, not in any ambiguous terms, the difference between the Atma and what is not an Atma, or Atma versus Anatma. So the whole purpose, the theme of this textbook is to give knowledge about our own true self, right? That's the goal. So who am I? That's what I'm trying to inquire. So one process is just to show that who I am not. Second thing is negate the experience properly, right? Because I may know that I am the supreme self or the Atma, but that's not what my experience is. So why this superimposition happening? What is Atma? What is not Atma? Why I see Atma as Anatma? So these were the few major topics we have been discussing. And Shankaracharya gave some brilliant example. Last week, the first example we saw was when the body-mind senses, the particularity of the body-mind senses is they're continuously changing. So when they change, it appears that the Atma is also changing. This is called, we call it as adhyasa, which is superimposition. So in fact, there is no relative movement for the moon at that point of time. So, but it appears that the moon is moving. So just like that, when we operate with the body and the senses and the mind, we feel that we are sad, we are happy, we have pain, I am limited. All that attributes of the body and the mind get superimposed to Atma. So that is what is explained here. And this is one of the fundamental problems discussed in almost all the Vedantic textbook, and this is called adhyasa, right? So if you really think about the sequencing, for a jiva, what Shankaracharya explained is there are different types of bodies. One body we saw physical body, then we saw what is subtle body, and then we understood what is causal body. And when we saw Atma, what is Atma? Atma is defined as the consciousness. And mind you, we clarified the definition of consciousness, because in neurology, the definition of consciousness is slightly different, because in neurology, consciousness is an attribute of the mind. But in Vedanta, consciousness or the Bodha or the Atma is defined as that by which I am aware of my thoughts, emotions, and everything. So that consciousness is completely separate from the body, the mind, and the senses. So this is what we are discussing now. In a few minutes, up to verse 26, this is the topic. So through the use of brilliant example, Shankaracharya makes this point very clear. So the first example is, means we saw in the previous class, not the previous class, the class before that we saw, right? When a blue cloth is there and a crystal is placed on top of that, the crystal appears to be blue. In fact, that blueness doesn't belong to the crystal. The blueness belonging to the cloth, but that the blueness get attributed to the crystal. So this is a problem. So this is the problem. So I have a body, I have a mind, but what happens? When I'm too much connected with the body and the mind, the properties or the attributes or the limitations or the happiness of the body and mind get attributed to the self. That's what Shankaracharya is trying to make us understand. And we heard, right? This needs to be listened in, this needs to be contemplated, and this needs to be internalized. Shravanam, Mananam, Nidithyasanam. This is the process by which we get our real identity. And if you remember, I quoted the example of this lucid dream, the dream. When we are in a dream world, what happened? The body we have is a dream body. It's not my real body, right? So that dream, when I get attached to that dream body, what happens? Any problem happens in that dream space get attributed to me, right? So if I get hurt, if I get hit in the dream, my physical body never get hit, right? So what happens? I feel the pain in the dream. So that is exactly what happened. So this analogy is going to help us a lot. And then another beauty of this analogy, which is called the Swapna Drishtanta, is when I identify my real self. What is that dream we call? It is called lucid dream. So in a lucid dream, what happens? I'm dreaming, I'm in the dream space and time, I'm operating in the dream world, but I know that I have an existence beyond this dream world. So that is going to give me enough courage to face any challenges in that dream world. Like that, we are sitting in the relative order of reality now. But if we are in that relative order of reality, if we identify our true nature, which is the absolute reality, so even though we are operating in the relative world, even though we are constrained by the relative time and space, but our fear, our suffering will end, because we know that there is a real existence of us is beyond this order of reality. So that is another way of looking at this. But the whole idea is this subject matter, the knowledge about the Atma, is given through brilliant example. That is the beauty. So on verse 20, we saw that what is the speciality of Atma? Means the presence of the Atma makes the other things to get activated. So we saw that in the olden days, what happens? When the sunlight comes, that will enable people to do their day-to-day transactions. Without the sunlight, they will not be operating the world outside. Just like that, the body, mind, and intellect, everything is inert and insentient without the presence of Atma. The presence of Atma is going to make them enable do things. So that is what the next verse was. We saw this. And again, another brilliant example is given by the superimposition. Like why we feel that means I am sad rather than I have sadness in me. Why I feel that I am happy rather than thinking that happiness is in with me. Because if I am sad, it is very difficult for me to change that. But if I have sadness, there is always a way to get rid of that sadness. So like that, why the attributes of the body and mind is getting superimposed into Atma. So a brilliant example is given. The color of the sky is not blue, but what happens? And it means because of our ignorance, we see the color of the sky as blue. Just like that, because of the adhyasa, what happens? Due to ignorance, the attribute of the body and the mind get attributed to the consciousness or the Atma. So that is a brilliant example, another brilliant example. And then finally, yeah, so this much we saw. And we can move on to the 22nd verse. Anu, could you chant this verse? Anu, are you in the call?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Ajnanan manasopathehe kartruttvadini chatmani kalpyante bhugate chandre chalanadi yatham bhasaha.
Same idea why the attributes of the body and the mind is attributed to Atma is explained with a brilliant example, another brilliant example. So Shankaracharya tells Ajnana means it is due to ignorance. So Ajnana manasopathe, because of the ignorance, what happens? our mind's qualities. Kartrutvani cha atmani. So the attributes of the mind and the qualities of the mind or the activities of the mind. So any thought happens in me, I feel that. For example, when I feel sad, what does that mean? That meant my emotions are active in my mind. What happens? I just get identified that emotion. For example, if I feel sad, I feel that I am sad because what happened? The sadness is an attribute of the mind which is different from me. So instead of feeling that I have sadness, my mind is sad, I feel that I am sad because of the ignorance. So due to ignorance, the emotions of the mind, the thoughts of the mind, the activities of the minds are get attributed to Atma. So another brilliant example is given, like when the moon is reflected in a water, like in the dark night, means night, means if there is a bucket of water and the moon is reflected, imagine that water is dancing. What is going to happen? You feel that if you are an ignorant person and you think that that is the moon, you feel that the moon is dancing. Practically, the moon is not dancing. What is dancing is the water. But the dancing of the water makes us feel that the reflection of the moon is dancing. When I see that the reflection of the moon is dancing, I feel that the actual moon is dancing. Like that, the thoughts, the emotions that comes to my mind, that emotions will superimpose to my own true nature. And I feel that I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm agitated. All these feelings are attributed to myself. Means I talked about one book also, right? I mean, a couple of books I said, like a couple of books I wanted to quote again is one is Authentic Happiness by Seligman, and the second one is The Search Inside Yourself. These two books talks about this idea extensively. This idea of my emotions and thoughts get superimposed with myself. And in fact, in Search Inside Yourself, they have given a brilliant mindfulness meditation practice to separate yourself from your emotions and thoughts. Because the moment you get identified with emotions and thoughts, they say that your problem starts. So this idea is not just an ancient idea. The modern psychology, the positive psychology recognized it because, as I said, explained earlier, right? Means typically once upon a time, the psychology was considered as if I have a problem, I need to go to a psychiatrist, get treated. But that is means lack of a problem or the solution of a problem is not going to make me happy. I need to tune my mind in such a way that I'm positively thinking. So this is the only way. If I'm identified with my thoughts and emotions, it is impossible for me to get happy and contented. So means in that Authentic Happiness, the book, there are 3 levels of happiness is described, and the ultimate happiness, for achieving the ultimate happiness, you have to find yourself. And you cannot find yourself without properly separating from this thoughts and emotions. Because imagine, very simple example. Let's say that you are so much upset, so angry, means the behavior itself is not in contrary, means it may be completely contrary to your own true nature. You might be a decent man, but at that point of time, what you utter or what you speak might be too much arrogance or too much aggressive. It can take you completely away from your nature. So that is why we need to clearly understand these emotions are not me, but they are in me. So that is explained again with a brilliant example. Any questions or any comments? Once again, you might be now realizing that all the examples we used in our Vedanta class comes from this book. It was literally a copy from this book. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. So let's see, attachment and emotions belong to the mind. That is the theme. And Shankaracharya illustrates with another brilliant example. So Anu, could you please chant?
Yeah. Rage cha sukha dukkhadi बुद्धौ सत्यां प्रवर्तते सुषुप्तौ नास्ति तन्नाशे तस्मात् बुद्धेस्तु नात्मनः.
Again, beautiful, beautiful example, right? So typically Shankaracharya tells, you experience, this is all of our experience. We experience desire, raga, desire, and we experience sukha and dukkha and ischa. Ischa means likes. So desire, likes, dislikes, pleasure, pain, all these things is experienced when our mind is active. When our mind is active means, let's pause here and try to understand what are all the states in which our mind is active. So in Vedanta, we have a model, and that model is called Avastatraya. We have seen that in our Vedanta class. What is Avastatraya? There are three states through which an individual goes through almost every day. The first state is known as Jagrat, or the waking state. Second state is known as Swapna, or the dream state. And the third state is known as Sushupti, or the deep sleep. So let's pause here and do a 5 minutes discussion and a brainstorming. What is the difference between these three states? Anybody? Any thought?
So I think, Rajesh, what we state we are is like the first state, if I'm not wrong. Right now?
Right now, which state you said, Sanjay ji?
Jagrati.
Correct. Absolutely. Is Jagrat, means that is exactly Jagrat. So what is Swapna?
When we sleep, is that what we call it? Swapna?
Dream, right?
Dream, yeah.
And deep sleep is?
That's the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is the literal meaning. Like each one of us have experienced these three states in our life. I know I have an exception. We have one person who has never dreamt. That's a different matter, but exceptions accepted. But generally, everybody goes through these three states. So what is the difference between this Jagrat and Swapna? Let me try to, just think of this. Don't just literally scan through the words and go through that, right? So what is Jagrat? Right now, Sanjay ji, you said we are in Jagrat state. What is the speciality of this Jagrat? Am I conscious of something?
When your body and mind both are active, or?
Absolutely. Your body and mind are active. That is excellent point, Gina. And second thing is what? When my body and mind is active, right? I'm sensing something. I'm perceiving something, right? Right now, I'm seeing the computer screen in front of me. I'm seeing the pictures of all of you. I'm hearing my sound and your sound. And if there is a good smell in this room, I'm feeling it. And I'm feeling the heat, means the weather, like it is 88 degrees outside. All that I'm experiencing. What exactly is the source of all this input?
World, outside world.
Exactly.
Your sense.
The outside world, right? So I am awake. That means, as Gina said, my body and my mind are active. When my body is active, naturally what happens? The sensors in the body is active, correct? When the sensors of the body is active, from where it is capturing the information? From the external world, right? The eyes are like a camera. It captures whatever in front of it. Ears are like a voice recorder. It captures all the audio signals around me. And the sense of smell, it captures all the smell around me. The sense of touch, it touches my body, it captures. And if I put something in my mouth, the tongue captures the sense of taste. And what happens internally? These sensory inputs were converted into electrical signals and finally represented as a mental activity. And what I'm seeing is the mental activity, but that mental activities are created by the sensory, the means from the sensory input. So the world is coded and put as mental activity. And that is what I'm experiencing. Is that clear? That is correct, right? What is the difference between dream? In the dream also, mind you, as far as your experience is concerned, when you are in the dream, the experience of the dream is what? As if I'm in the real world. Correct? When you are in the dream, your experience of the dream is, do you think that it is false if it is not a lucid dream?
No.
No, right? That is why people cry in the dream. That is why people get scared in the dream. So what is the difference in the waking state from where the inputs are coming?
From our sense organs.
From outside.
Exactly. From the world, it is captured by the sense organs and it is represented as mental activity. In the dream, what happens? Your sense organs are shut down.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. Your
body is almost inactive. It is in a hibernate state or in a sleep state. Correct?
Yes.
But still, I'm experiencing a world. There are mental activities created. But from where this mental activity is coming? Imagine like you are watching a channel in your TV. So the first channel is what? It is coming from the camera put out. Means outside of your house, you have 3 cameras and that feed is coming to your TV.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose you change the channel to a DVD player. What happens? Again, in your screen, you will see content. The only difference is that the source of the content in the first case was a live external camera, whereas in the second case, what? Some stored information in a hard disk or in a DVD player, DVD, isn't it?
Yes.
But as far as the experience is concerned, it is the same.
Yes.
So in the case of dream, what happens? Your unconscious or subconscious mind provides the content. Why a particular dream is happening the way it is happening, I have no idea. But something in my mind is creating a content and that is represented as mental activities and I'm experiencing it.
But Rajaji, in a dream, I'm just passively experiencing. Whereas when I'm awake, I am actively experiencing.
But when you are in that experience, do you differentiate between that passive and active experience?
No.
That's all I'm telling. Right? That is exactly the point Shankaracharya is telling. And the third point, in deep state, deep sleep, what happens? The body is not active. The mind is also not active. So when the DVD player and the camera is switched off, what do you see in the TV?
Blank screen.
Blank screen. That's exactly what the deep sleep is. So when there is nothing in the mind, there is no mental activities, there is nothing for the consciousness to see. So now think of 2 examples. In the first example, what happened? You see a painful experience outside. What would be the feeling you will be experiencing in your mind?
Sorrow.
Sorrow. Sadness. Yeah, exactly. Sorrow. And in your dream, next day, what happened? You saw a very happy thing, like a beautiful, you saw you won the lottery. What exactly you experienced in the dream?
Happiness, joy.
Happiness, right? So now tell me, what exactly is the source of this emotions and thoughts? So if the mind, if let's say that the mind is a screen, let's imagine that, the TV screen. If a comedy clip is played, what happens? I laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And if a tragedy clip is played, I cry.
Right.
And in the case of waking state experience, from where that comedy clip came, from the direct external world, active world. Whereas in the case of the dream, that sadness came from a passive memory, but it doesn't matter. The happiness and sadness you experienced is created by the mental activity. What exactly is the source of that mental activity? In the first case, it is a live external field. In the second case, it is a stored memory. But the point is that this event, mental activity, is that what is creating happiness and sadness in me. And now, even if you are in the most pathetic state, imagine that you are sleeping. You won't experience neither happiness nor sadness. So Shankaracharya, coming back to this verse, he tells, right, the desires, the pleasures, the pain, everything is experienced when the mind is active. The mind is active only in two conditions, in Jagrat and in Sopna. Because Jagrat, body and mind are active. And in Sopna, what happens? The
Only
mind
mind is active.
mind is still active. So even though the body is not active, you are getting the feed from somewhere else. And when you are in deep sleep, what happens? You don't, means the happiness and all these emotions cease to exist. So you are still conscious. The consciousness is still there because there is nothing else for the consciousness to reveal there. So Shankaracharya is telling that these attributes, whether it is a desire or it is a pleasure or a pain, what happens? They are mental activities. They are not Atma. So you can say that I am seeing sadness, or my mind is sad, or I feel sad. All that is fine. But sadness is not your nature, and happiness is not your nature. Means, yes, I see sadness in front of me. That is correct. I see my mind is extremely sad and I feel it. That is true. But I am not sadness. What happens is, the problem is, I take that sadness upon me. Just like when you had that crystal and the cloth, the color of the crystal, sorry, the color of the cloth got attributed to this crystal. What happens? When the mind is sad, I feel that I am sad. If the blue, instead of a red cloth, if I put a blue cloth on the top of the crystal appears to be blue or a green. Okay, I'm happy. And when the cloth is red, I'm appears to be sad. But the crystal is neither red nor green. It is completely pure and white. The thoughts coming to the mind, the emotions comes to the mind are sad and happy. So you need to understand that is the working. And now once you separate the happiness and sadness in you, there is a way to handle that. That is why this particular training is given. And this is not very easy. Don't think that means theoretically you can understand that. But when you are in that sad state, it will be very hard for you to separate from that sadness. That is why you have to practice this mindfulness meditation. This is where the mindfulness comes to the picture, because mindfulness is going to help you to differentiate between you and what you have. Typically what happens is, what you have is attributed to yourself, or in which platform you're staying in get attributed to yourself. So this mindfulness practice is very important, extremely important. How do you practice mindfulness? See, we can have a few exercises, because I think Gina, probably on Sunday classes, we may have to introduce some of these mindfulness practices, because that would be very, very helpful in this context. There are a lot of, because the mindfulness has a lot of dimensions. One is, of course, you wanted to, because mindfulness, the greatest advantage of mindfulness is it will give you the self-awareness. Because even if you look at the, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, yep.
Now we can.
Suddenly something happened. Okay, so what I was saying is that, see, this is one must-have skill for every professional. Forget about the spiritual seekers. The mindfulness is you're mindful of what you're doing. Like, you're aware of it. You're consciously doing it. So this is a great skill. So the mindfulness, first of all, you have to identify your own mind, and you have to identify, like, means even the social intelligence. For that, this mindfulness is very important. So we need to practice it, because without this mindfulness practice, you cannot experience this particular techniques. And there are, once you practice mindfulness, there are beautiful Vedantic meditations which helps you to get into these ideas. So why these meditations are very important? Just a question. So imagine that I'll give you one traditional stock example. This is Socrates' own example. So imagine that you never saw a pure crystal. Whenever you saw a crystal, the crystal is on top of some cloth. What would be your experience and what would be your conclusion about that crystal?
The crystal is that color of the cloth.
Yeah. You may think that that crystal is always means that is a blue crystal. But mind you, with some help, some practice, at least for 5 minutes, you are able to remove that cloth and keep the crystal in one place. What happens? You realize that the crystal is not blue, the crystal is white. That realization comes to you. Thereafterwards, even if you see the crystal on the top of a cloth, you have that understanding, right? It is always there. So one of the approach of Patanjali Yoga Sutra is what? Through intense meditation practice, right? So Patanjali gives you a lot of meditative practices. With that practice, what happens? You haven't self-realized to master or anything like that. But that meditation is going to give you a glimpse of that experience. Because through that meditation, what you are trying to do, you are trying to means control or almost stop all the mental activities. And when the mental activities are stopped, what you experience is a tremendous joy. That is what people say when they meditate, they get some happiness and joy. So when they get that tremendous joy, what is going to happen is you get a glimpse, right? This is my real nature. Typically, my feeling and my experience is completely determined by what thoughts comes to my mind. So that is why Karma Yoga, what Karma Yoga does, Karma Yoga controls what thoughts comes to my mind. Because whenever I do the work, I'm doing it as with Ishwararpana Buddhi. And when I get the result, I'm doing it with a, what do you call, the Prasada Buddhi. Yeah. So what happens is Karma Yoga is forcing what content is coming to my mind. And that way it will reduce the noise. And then Upasana Yoga, what it does is it gives you a clear path. So this is why it is prescribed. But the core idea here is we need to understand this is not just Vedanta. Even every lot of psychological teaching is also giving us. Abraham Maslow in 1940, he has predicted the hierarchy of need. And what is that final top hierarchy of need? Initially, it starts with of course, the food and the job security and all these relationship, contentment, all those things will come. But if you remember that pyramid, what is the top of that pyramid? If you remember, it's called self-actualization. You haven't heard of that? Okay, Google Maslow's, Abraham Maslow, a famous psychologist. In 1940, he has postulated this. But his self-actualization is not even near with the Atma Jnana, but even to that extent, the whole idea is going in this direction. That's why Shankaracharya is telling that attachment, emotions, likes, dislikes, happiness and sadness, all the 128 emotions, everything belongs to the mind. And this is exactly what is Daniel Goleman's approach also. Because what is Daniel Goleman's groundbreaking discovery? Because once upon a time, we all believed that having a high IQ is the greatest skill, or it is the prerequisite for success. But even if you have high IQ, if you don't have control over your emotions, you will be a failure. Hundreds of experiments are there. So how do you gain control? How do you recognize and control your emotions? You will be able to recognize a change when you stay out of the change. Isn't it?
Yeah, Rajesh, one question. You mentioned about the glimpse of the crystal, right? Once we get that glimpse, is that good enough to get that enlightenment, or is it just you still need to have that sustained happiness or a
Yeah.
sustained joy? Is it still more to go?
Still more to go, Gina. It's only a glimpse. It's just a trailer. So this is the approach of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Patanjali wants, because any amount of talking will not make you convinced. But if you practice those meditation technique, the peace, that means the Bible say, right? The peace that pass all the understanding. Once you experience a glimpse of it, it will be a great motivator for you to proceed, because the self-realization can happen. What was the second verse of Atma Bodha? Every other sadhana, including meditation, yoga, prayers, everything is good. It is only prerequisites. Only thing that can give us the complete self-realization is the knowledge of the self. And that knowledge of the self, it has to transform from the paroksha anubhuti to aparoksha anubhuti. And it can be done only through the scriptural studies, and it can be done only through the shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasana. But without having a pure mind and without having a controlled mind, that is impossible. So that's why the Upasana Yoga may give you a glimpse, and Patanjali call it as Nimisha Samadhi, like a temporary state of Samadhi. What the goal is to extend that Samadhi into 24/7. Like we are going to see that in the Bhagavad Gita class next Sunday, right? Sthita Prajna, like what exact? Sthita Prajna means, Prajna means what? A special knowledge. What is that special knowledge? Normally we do have the knowledge, but there is a prajna, praharshena jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Jnana means knowledge. Prakarshena jnana. That is prajna. So this prajna means typically we know everything else. But suppose you know yourself properly. That is prajna mentioned here. And the sthita prajna means what? His prajna is steady. It is not like today I know that I am self, but when I get into a problem, that knowledge vanishes. That is not sthita prajna. Sthita prajna means a person who can keep in the state of samadhi 24/7. Because in verse 53, we defined yoga, right? Samatha vachala buddhi tada yoga bhavapsisi. When the mind is achala, without movement, stays in samadhi, that is the we can say that the goal of the yoga is achieved. So yes, it is good to get, means all of us can get that simple glimpse of experience. But seventh chapter we saw, right? Manushyanam sahasreshu. Out of thousands of people, probably one may come to get into that self-realized state. But never feel rejected. What Krishna said is in the second chapter, Gita, remember? Nehabhikramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate. The next two sentences are very important. Solpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. Even if you practice a little bit, that much benefit we will get. So that's the incentive for all of us. And also in the sixth chapter, Krishna gives a promise, right? Because Arjuna said, I tried to do karma yoga and upasana yoga all my life, and I passed away without attaining the self-realization. Should I have to start everything from scratch? Since I went after the yoga, what happened? I left the world properly. I couldn't enjoy the world properly. So I couldn't enjoy this and I couldn't enjoy that. So that was the question. So if I get yoga prashta, am I going to be in a no man's land? Krishna said, no. That will be carried forward. No effort will be wasted. In your next life, you will be coming as a ripe fruit. That is what is very evident. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa didn't go to any Vedanta training for getting self-realized. Who taught Ramana Maharshi? Those were so ripe souls, right? They came with almost minimal requirement. Their mind was pure. They had already the Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Sthiti. This is just by the way. Any other
Exactly,
questions?
Rajeshji, just wanted to say that one of my biggest challenges with meditation is holding on to that moment of peace and clarity that I feel while meditating, but I'm not able to sustain that throughout the rest of the day.
Yep. So the only way is, so there is no failed meditation. Every meditation is successful. And in the 6th chapter, Shankaracharya begins his commentary saying that if you can sustain that thought, you have already passed the state of meditation. You got into samadhi, right? That is what is samadhi, is mental absorption. So the very meditation means if because the great example given in our tantric books are beautiful, right? So if you want to strengthen your physical muscles, what do you have to do? You have to lift and put the weight down multiple times. The more you do that, your muscles get strengthened. So the mindfulness or meditation, when you practice, the skill you have to employ most often is bringing the mind back the moment you realize that the thought is gone. It doesn't matter. The very nature of the mind is that the thoughts will go, means you will go out of the thoughts immediately. So the moment you realize that, bring it back and feel good about it. And please don't go to a meditation session with some expectation. Today I'm going to be happy. And there are so many factors which can disturb. The experienced meditators know. If you have a slight headache, your meditation will not be successful. You might be the most experienced meditator. So there are so many things that can happen. Understand that this is just like learning the swimming. Like someday, or even playing the tennis, some days it will be good. You have to play as much as possible. The more you play, the more you get trained. That's what happens with meditation. So meditation, we have to approach very scientifically, because not as a blind faith or belief. Yeah, we'll see this. These things are coming in the Gita and Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Once we get a chance to go over that, Patanjali Yoga Sutra is the book. You will be surprised to see the depth in which that book is going.
Can't wait, Rajiji.
What is that?
I said that I can't wait to find out.
Yeah.
Also, one more observation, Rajaji, is that this process of bringing the mind back all the time can become very frustrating, and sometimes it can prompt you to drop out altogether.
Right, but that is where the expectation, right? Typically, what is the expectation of a meditator? I'm going to meditate properly. But if you set the expectation properly, that my mind is going back, means initially you have to do that, because before you are becoming a singer, right? In Hindustani and all, how many hours they have to sing on one note. It can be very frustrating, and singing is a difficult art. You have to learn how to sustain the note, how to try and move from the one note. Like that, meditation has to be learned. And please understand, 6th chapter, Krishna tells this is a learned skill. Of course, if you're lucky, if you're meditating a lot in the previous birth, you may come with that skill. But otherwise, you have to acquire that skill. But somewhere you have to acquire. And that is where sometimes once in a week, these group meditations are going to be helpful.
Rajesh,
Yeah.
I have 2 questions actually.
Please go ahead.
Obviously, one thing that even we tried this meditation. Personally, my experience, even I tried meditation practice pretty much every day. But how to slow those thoughts so that the focus can stay, or the mind gets at a position where your thoughts are like no thoughts actually to that stage. And like in this verse, I just wanted to understand that, is there any 4th stage after deep sleep?
No.
Yeah. Because
please talk. Yeah, please.
I was just saying that in one of the lectures of Swami Sarvapriyanandaji, when he was talking about Mandukya Upanishad, I think there somewhere I remember he mentioned that okay, there is beyond this, there is a 4th stage, which is like
Turiya, right? That's Turiya. What they call.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell my point is, so Turiya, some people call it as a separate state, but in fact, what is that? Turiya is the true nature of the Atma. That's it.
Yeah.
So it is not a state, because these 3 states are these 3 envelopes that is covering my Atma. So when that covering is gone, what left is Turiya. So We don't have to call Turiya as a, means it is up to you. It is all different models. So one model, you can always say that this has 4 states, but as far as I understand, I will go back and check in Gaudapada's Karika. It is considered as only one, means 3 states of consciousness, and Turiya is the real nature. But because of the association with body and the mind, this Turiya appears to be Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti. Just like the real moon is there, one day cloud is there, the second day you will see with some colored glass, and the third thing is you are seeing with something else. So once you remove all these upathis, what you are seeing is the Turiya. So Turiya is always there. The Turiya, because even when Turiya is not there, the Jagrat will not function. Just understand that. It is not independent state. Turiya is not an independent state out of Jagrat. Even for Jagrat to experience, the actual Turiya state has to be there. So this is what the Mandukya Karika is saying. But there is nothing wrong in classifying it as a different model. So it's all convenience of teachings. That's it. But since you referred Mandukya Upanishad, this is the theme of the Mandukya Upanishad, by the way. These 3 states. So Manduka means a frog. Just like a frog is leaping from one leaf to the other. So Gaudapada gives these 3 different leaves. One is Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, and Turiya, the Atma, is the frog, which jumps from one to the other. So that is the theme of that brilliant Upanishads. A lot of meditation technique comes from this Mandukya Upanishad. Even the cyclic meditation which Gina taught in the class, right? That comes from the Gaudapada Karika of the Mandukya Upanishad. So let me just take a small diversion, a tangent, and ask you, who is Gaudapada? Gaudapada, by the way? So Gaudapada is a very famous teacher, very, very famous teacher. He is the first one who systematically wrote a commentary on Advaita Vedanta, as far as the history is concerned. Advaita Vedanta is much beyond Gaudapada, and this Gaudapada is the Parama Guru of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya's Guru is Govindapada, and this Govindapada's Guru is Gaudapada. And this Gaudar typically came from Bengal. I don't know, Arnabji, like if there is any, that type of name is there.
There's Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Yeah, some means there are a lot of, see, one problem or good thing about our culture is when there is a master, so many stories will come about that master, right? So about Shankaracharya, there are hundreds of stories. Like Shankaracharya, there is a Shankara Digvijayan. There are 2 books. One is by one of his disciple, means Anandagiri, and then there is one by Vidyaranya. So these popular 2 books are giving a brief biography of Shankara, Shankara's 32 life year span. So in that there are so many stories. Like that, there is a big story about Gaudapada. I'll tell that one day, because one school say that he was the disciple of the Maharshi Patanjali. So Maharshi Patanjali, who lived in, let's say, our Chidambaram temple, and he was trained by none other than Lord Shiva. 2 disciples of, favorite disciples of Shiva was Patanjali and Vyakrapada. You can see in Chidambaram, you can see one tiger and one serpent with Shiva. So Patanjali was trained, means with 3 things. One is the rules of Ayurveda, and the second one was, of course, the Yoga Sutra, and the third one was Mahabhashya. Mahabhashya means it is a book on grammar, like Panini's grammar. A commentary was written. So these 3 are Patanjali's contribution. And again, these are all legends, so don't take it literally. And I'm just telling just for the information sharing. So I'll tell that and we'll wind up here today. But the story goes like this. Patanjali, he wanted to spread this message to the entire world. And the legend says that he was the incarnation of Adishesha, the divine serpent. So what he did was, since Adishesha has this 1,000 heads, he took his original form and he brought 1,000 disciples. 1,000 disciples. And one of these disciples was this Gauder. He came from Bengal. But this Gauder had a problem. His intelligence was not that good. But these 1,000 people, they started listening to Patanjali. So each head of Patanjali used to narrate one sutras or one ideas. 1,000 people started writing it down. But the legend says again, ordinary people cannot look at Patanjali or the Adishesha directly. They will become ashes. So this dictation was going on. Patanjali instructed nobody should go out. So one day, this Gauder just went out. He was a little bit distracted. And the other 999 people were sitting and writing. One guy thought, what exactly he's doing inside? So he removed the cloth. As a result, all these 999 people got ashes. The only survivor was this guy. What Patanjali did was, he blessed him. He brought into a very, very, very elevated state. And that he eventually became a sage. And that is why Gudapada, they say. It's all legend. It is all good to read, but that is not what our goal is. Anyway, so coming back, what we are seeing is 2 verses we saw today. We may stop here. I have a very hard stop at 8:55. What happens is 2 verses. The first verse we saw was just like the Athyasa was illustrated with the what happens in a moon, the reflection of a moon, when it reflects in the water, what happens? When the water dances, the moon dances. Like that, when a sad thought comes and disturbed my mind, I feel that I am disturbed. The second verse explained that, yes, when the mind is active, I feel happiness, sadness, and everything. But when the mind and the body is suspended, I don't experience anything. So that means that the happiness, sadness, and everything is an attribute of the mind, not an attribute of the consciousness. So we took a diversion, because if we need to understand this verse properly, we need to have an idea of the Avastatraya. That's what it is. So we may stop here. And what I would request Anu is, we have 10 minutes. Anu, if you could chant these verses today, it would be good, up to 23, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, right, the Rajesh, or from?
Yeah, you can start from the beginning if it is okay for you. So we will see next week, actually 8:30. And once again, thank you very much for adjusting the schedule. Okay, I know you can chant.
Papanam Shantanam Vitaraginam Mumukshunam
It's okay, take your time.
I'll just chant today's verses.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Okay, soon we can end.
Do you want me to project? I can project if you want.
No, I got it. Thank you. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. I just ज्ञानान् मानसोपाधेः कर्तृत्वादीनि चात्मनि कल्प्यन्ते भुगते चन्द्रे चलनादि यथाम्भसः रागेच्छा सुखदुःखादि बुद्धौ सत्यां प्रवर्तते सुषुप्तौ नास्ति तन्नाशे तस्मात् बुद्धेस्तु नात्मनः प्रकाशोऽर्कस्य तोयस्य शैत्यमग्नेर्यथोष्णता स्वभावः सच्चिदानन्द नित्यनिर्मलमात्मनः. I think I went past one shloka.
Thank you, Anuji.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And
Thank you all. Yeah. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.